So I just want to start out by, I guess, a bit of a disclaimer to let you know that this investigation is obviously very early and that it is ongoing. So the information that I'm providing today is going to be very preliminary, and that there is a chance that some of it would be subject to change as evidence is gathered and analyzed. So I can start by telling you that 12:18 p.m. today, Saskatoon Police Service 911 call center received a call for service to Evan Hardy Collegiate, and there was a report that there was an injured party and also that there was a fire. By happenstance, we had a Saskatoon Police Service school resource officer there. So a fully uniformed officer was at that school for a different event, and he immediately responded into the area where the event was occurring. Within moments, that officer took a 14-year-old female suspect into custody, and while the Saskatoon Fire Department and Medivy paramedics dealt with a 15-year-old female who was suffering from burns. At this point, the scene has been secured. The investigation has been turned over to the Saskatoon Police Service Serious Assault Unit, and they are now in charge of gathering and analyzing the evidence. And at this point, we are, meaning the Saskatoon Police Service, are working with the Saskatoon Public Board of Education to ensure that we work in sharing information and ensuring that the staff and students are also cared for in terms of the protocols that the school board has set in place for traumatic events.
Do we know the status of the victim right now? Was she taken to hospital? What's the current condition they're in?
I don't have an update on the condition. Yes, she was transported to Royal University Hospital, where she is presently being treated in the emergency area, as far as I understand. And I don't have an update as to what her status is right now.
You mentioned there was, you guys responded to a call kind of about a fire in the school. Do we know how that fire was started?
At this point, we believe we understand how it was started, but that still is subject to the investigation to make sure that we have it correct.
Was there a jerry can or anything obtained in the investigation?
That I don't know. The scene's been locked down, and I haven't personally been there, so I don't know what's been gathered, but I do know that the scene was secured immediately and has been held right now as being processed by our identification people.
Now, one of the things about this, assault and fire, a lot of people are wondering, does that mean that the victim of this was set on fire?
Yes, at this point, that is what we believe occurred.
So where's the suspect?
Suspect is presently in our detention center. She's been placed under arrest.
Do we know the status of the suspect? There was some rumors floating around online, and obviously a lot of rumors that they might be a disabled student. Do we know that? And do we know if the two were known to each other?
I don't have information about either of those. And again, like I said, it's very early on in the investigation. So at this point, those answers come as the detectives interview witnesses and school staff to figure out exactly what, if any, relationship there was and the status of the accused person.
Are both parents, are the parents or relatives of both students already being informed?
Yes, my understanding is that the victim's parents are notified and are at the hospital, and then the caregivers of the suspect have also been notified.
I don't know if that comments, but there were no other injuries, though, to any other students or staff or anyone else present in the event, do we know?
Correct, just to one person. Oh, sorry, actually, I should back that up. One of the teachers apparently did suffer some injuries while trying to put out the fire. So that was the only other person that was injured, but no other students or staff, to my knowledge, were injured during the event.
Were they both taken to hospital, the teacher as well? Or?
The teacher is at hospital. I'm not sure if he was transported or took himself, but he is at hospital being treated.
And just to clarify on that as well, was this teacher who was involved in this injured trying to put out the fire, or was it part of
My understanding is that the teacher was injured trying to put the fire out.
Has there been any property damage as a result of the fire?
I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know if you can speak to this, but our understanding is that the students were sent home, obviously for the afternoon light events. Do we know when they'll be coming back to class?
No, that's part of where we work collaboratively with the school board. Ultimately, they are the ones who will determine when and if the school can open. The only ask that we have, or I guess protocol for the police, would be that the general area where it occurred would be locked down until we're done with our investigation. And then once that is done, the school board protocols would kick in terms of how they're going to deal with the staff, the students, and the parents of the students that go to that school.
Obviously, the
Yeah, honestly, that's one of my major concerns because one of my officers was there on scene immediately. And so we do have protocols, obviously, within our service as well that are being kicked into place right now to ensure that we look after their mental well-being, because this is not just another day at the office, as you've alluded to. And so, yeah, the mood in our office right now is quite low, and there's some upset people, obviously, because this is not something that we ever expected, and could really prepare for.
Can you talk how quick the response was? Like, how chaotic was it? Obviously, there's a school resource officer there handling one situation, and then you guys get this call. How long did it take you guys to respond, and can you speak for the other departments as well?
I'm not sure. My understanding is that Fire and Medivy, especially Fire, were there very quickly. Listening to the radio traffic, our officer that was on scene was at the immediate area of the event within 30 seconds, had someone in custody within 60 seconds, and was stabilizing the scene within moments. So the response from our part was immediate, and the fire department was very close. There's a fire hall not far off, and they were there rendering aid, and then Medivy came afterwards and did what they do as well. So the response was as quick as it possibly could have been.
I know early days yet, but like, what kind of would you do in a situation like this? Like, would this be something where you're looking at security protocols for all schools kind of down the line?
You know, until the facts are known, it's very difficult to say what, if anything, would be changed. Obviously, there'll be some discussions and after action, but to say what could be done differently or could be changed would be difficult to say without knowing fully what actually went on in the full circumstances, and that could take, you know, weeks for all that information to be gathered.
Going forward, is it up to, like, I guess, how does this investigation get handled in terms of who's responsible for what? Does the school board kind of handle the status of the student that was impacted, or students? Do you guys do that? How does that kind of unfold over the next little bit, as people obviously will be very curious to see and learn what happened?
So the police service SROs will be there, the school resource officers will be there as a resource, but ultimately the school board will be the ones that will look after the mental well-being of their students and staff internally. And then moving forward, if there's a role for us that they ask that we are involved with, we would definitely assist wherever we could.
Does this event speak to the importance of having school resource officers? Like, was the fact that one was already there imperative to the investigation and the action that was able to be taken?
I believe that this situation could have been much worse and could have been more out of control if we hadn't have an officer there right away. And the reason we're in the schools is to prevent and mitigate any kind of risk to public safety that we can have. So it's tough for me to say how many we've prevented in the past. That's my hope, is that this is a one-off that never occurs again. But I can speak to, you know, anecdotally saying that having our officers present in the schools, working collaboratively with the teachers, the principals, the school boards, is definitely preventing violence. Not everything is obviously preventable, but you can imagine having a uniformed police officer come and restore some sort of order to a very chaotic scene within 30 seconds is going to be beneficial for everybody that's in that scene, because everyone looks to the uniform to do something. And he did exactly what we would expect him to do, and he's very calm on the police radio, and that's going to spread out throughout the school. And I think just seeing somebody there in authority to assist them within seconds is extremely beneficial.
Had police heard anything about this student who is the suspect beforehand, or had dealt with him in the past?
That information I don't know.
Is there a court date for charges?
At that point, the suspect is in custody. At this point, I don't know what the charges are. The way the investigation works is that the detectives in our serious assault unit will be interviewing witnesses, gathering any evidence they could. If there's video, that type of stuff, they may, in conjunction with the Crown Prosecutor, find out what are the appropriate charges. But at this point, the suspect is in custody. As the investigation unfolds, they'll determine what the evidence tells them the proper charge would be.
Given that this is a minor, is there any difference at all at this point in sort of how they're held, how they're assessed?
Sorry.
No.
So the Youth Criminal Justice Act would be the one that would obviously dictate how we handle this person. We are obviously allowed to keep the person in custody for up to 24 hours, and at that point we have to make a decision whether or not we're going to charge them or release them. Obviously, the rights that they have under the Youth Criminal Justice Act are somewhat different than adults, but in terms of how the investigation proceeds, really it wouldn't be much difference. It's gathering the evidence, the facts lead them to what they believe the criminal offense would be, and they would lay the appropriate charges.
Lots of talk about banning cell phones in schools. Are you able to talk about the importance of having a device like a cell phone on hand when it comes to reporting incidents like these?
Yeah, so in a case like that, we would rely on, you know, the staff and others that are around that would have their cell phones. And in this case, I don't know exactly who was able to make that phone call right away. I believe that it was a staff member. I think maybe the benefits of not having that distracting students day in and day out versus being able to call for help. Remember that in a high school with numerous teachers, there's always going to be someone, an adult, or a person in authority that would have access to a phone or communications. So, I mean, we didn't have cell phones 25 years ago and everything seemed to work. So I never thought of that aspect of it, but in this case, I don't think it made a difference.
So what kind of protocol will be implemented after this incident, just for the peace of mind of the parents?
Well, again, I don't know because I don't know fully what the investigation is going to show. You know, and until they speak with witnesses and talk about all of the aspects of what happened and why it happened, it'd be very difficult to say what, if any, changes would come from it.
Did the officer have a body camera on him?
He did not.
And just one more time, if you could just clarify, if the other girl lit the other girl on fire, and what you know on that, because I just missed that.
Yeah, that is my understanding, is what they responded to was that the suspect we have in custody started the victim on fire.
Do we know how the fire was put out?
I believe it was put out by the teacher and some other staff. Whether it was a fire extinguisher or whatever, I don't know. I just know that they did extinguish it.
Those are good? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys and girls.